Hey, and welcome back to Beer Babies, the podcast journey where we try to find the best beer that money can buy. I'm your host, and I like some beers. And joining me today, I've got a very special guest. I've got Kilty here from St. John's Bar, and I'm really excited to have a bit of a chat with him. So, Kilty, do you mind, just to start us off, let us know a little bit about St. John's and what you guys are all about?
Righto, so we're a small craft beer focused bar in Launceston, Tasmania. We've been around for about 7 years. Just had our birthday the other day, actually. So
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
definitely 7 years.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, it was good. We celebrated with a round of shots.
Nice.
We focused on bringing beer from elsewhere to Tasmania. It's sort of our main shtick. When we first opened, you couldn't really get craft beers in a bar anywhere. You could go to the bottle shop and buy it and drink it at home. There was no bar that had a focus on serving your craft beer on tap. There's a couple places that had a few things, but no one was doing it in particular.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about, because it's interesting. I suppose, like saying you guys are 7 years old. I think I can sort of remember back to when this place opened, because I hadn't been drinking for too long then. But I remember thinking like the craft beer was a really weird thing at that point in time. What was it? So you're saying there weren't bars that did it. What was it that made you guys want to do it?
Well, we'd all been working in bottle shops. So I came along probably about 6 months after the pub actually opened, but I was a regular drinker from the beginning and threw my hat in the ring from the start. So
Yeah.
the boys knew I wanted to be part of the place.
Mm-hmm.
But the guys who own it, they were all working down at Crown Cellars in Bathurst Street. So
Yeah.
they were selling craft beer there, getting a lot through. And they even had, I think they got to the point where they had growler fills. So were getting in kegs of imported stuff from the UK and the US. And they'd fill a growler and go. And I'm not sure how legal that actually is these days. But yeah, so the love of just all the customers, a regular clientele coming through who wanted to, have a place to drink these beers together,
And I suppose that's really cool, and it makes so much sense that they were able to identify a hole in the market and then fill it so successfully. Because when it's in the name, like St. John's Craft Beer, it is synonymous with craft beer in Launceston. Whenever I think of craft beer, the first place I think of is here. Do you guys find that now that sort of the craft beers are becoming more common, has that sort of changed your clientele at all, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of the regulars who were rusted on in the start of things have sort of either moved on or come less than they did. And it's definitely since what I call the proliferation of craft beer has occurred. We get a lot more of everybody. In fact, a lot of it's mainly tourism driven. So a good chunk of our summer trade is people from elsewhere coming by. So a lot of our focus has kind of switched, not entirely from bringing beers from elsewhere to Launceston, but we definitely showcase a lot more of Tasmania in response to those people coming and asking for those beers that are local.
And I suppose that's probably too with like the growth of the craft beer industry in Tasmania. Because I suppose the reason we started this podcast essentially was because me and my mates would only drink pure blonde, which is tastes like nothing. So we wanted to try new beers. And I feel like as we've been going, we're just learning more and more that like Tasmania, Australia, everywhere has all these amazing beers to offer. So when you're picking beers, is there a criteria, or do you guys just find the coolest stuff and bring it over?
A little bit of both. I mean, obviously we try to fill categories to start with. So we'll keep a lager, a pale ale, an IPA, sour beers, and something dark at the very least. But yeah, it literally is. We try to find the coolest things we can to put on tap for people who haven't seen them before, and the best of the stuff that we can get regularly.
Okay, yeah.
So we've got a good amount of supply of some of the best beers from the mainland constantly coming through. But yeah, if we can get our hands on something from, say, Garage Project in New Zealand or Sierra Nevada in the States, just for examples, some of the Scandi stuff like McKellar, we'll do our best to get something interesting on tap so when you come through. The other thing we do as well, we have this methodology where we never try to keep one beer on tap the same for too long. And we'll change a keg to a different beer once it runs out. So we'll switch pale ales you know, if it's a really busy day, maybe 3 times in a day, we'll put 3
Okay.
different kegs on the same tap.
Yeah, so that is really interesting to me, because I suppose then you'd want, so the people that are coming here for the craft beer more than a brand of beer. Would you say?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, there's only 2 things that we keep on tap all the time, and that's Stone and Wood Pacific Ale, because they helped us out in a big way in the beginning.
Okay, yeah.
With a lot of, you know, subsidised beer and freight costs for us.
It helps that that's such a tasty beer.
Oh, we call it the gateway beer.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to slip on from like a pure blonde drinker.
Yep.
You go, hey, why don't you try this instead?
Yep.
And it's not in your face, it's not aggressive, and it's really, really approachable thing.
I know.
So that's always on.
I used to be embarrassed that all I drank was pure blonde, but now I get embarrassed because I say my favorite craft beer is the Stone and Wood Pacific Ale. It's the most basic answer. It's like, yeah, of course you like the number 1 voted beer for 20 years in a row.
Well, there's a reason for that. It's good.
It is really good. Yeah.
We haven't taken it on our tap list for that reason. It's pretty fabulous.
Yeah, I think there's it, and it's awesome that so you've got that consistency, and I suppose it is nice to have that starting point for someone. So if someone comes in who I used to didn't drink a lot of craft beer, you could say, well, let's start here.
That's it. And we've come back around to lagers and pilsners a lot lately as well.
Okay.
Because a lot of local guys and smaller craft guys are making them now, and they're a really tricky beer to make and make well. So it's nice to be able to see some of the really good ones coming through. So, you know, even for the people who don't like craft beer and want a normal beer, we've got options for them too now. It was we had Mona Foma recently, and they did the Tassie Brew. It was like a Cascade Blue lager knockoff.
Oh, yeah. So as we were just saying, so I found too, you're talking about the lagers and the pilsners and stuff. It is interesting that you used to think a smaller boutique brewery, they'd be making weird and wonderful things, but now they are making those more standard beers. I tried the other week the Little Rivers, just the Dorset lager, and that was
Cracking beer.
A really tasty lager. Because again, I don't think I'm a huge lager guy, but it's just something about it really good. So it is really cool, like you say, that there's such a wide range of beers, and that's what you guys provide. So while we're talking about beers, I guess this is where the podcast gets a little bit personal. I want to know what is your favorite beer. It doesn't have to be one that you guys sell, but I just want to know what's your go-to beer.
That's a funny one. The truthful answer to that question is that it changes every week. It's sort of works with our ethos here.
Yeah.
But given that we spent a lot of time in lockdown last year, I got stuck on one particular beer, mainly because we had a lot of it at the time.
Okay.
And it was all we were drinking, and we thought we'd never drink another beer again.
Yep.
At some point there. So what we had lying around was this Akasha, which is a New South Wales brewery.
Yeah.
They're in just north of Sydney. They do this single hop IPA called the Mosaic, using Mosaic hops.
Okay, yeah.
And I ended up just drinking lots and lots and lots of that, and it became my beer of the year of last year, mainly not so much because it was an excellent beer, and it is, but because it captured a time and a place for me.
Yeah.
And I thought that beer really summed up last year for me. It's got lots of it, but looking like we're going to have none of it.
Yeah.
And, really enjoying the flavour of that beer, just in case I never got to have another one ever again.
Yeah, and I suppose that's a really interesting way to put it, is because I've noticed that now as I drink different beer, because like I said, I used to just drink pure blonde, but now that I drink a lot more different beers, I do often equate a beer with the place. So the Stone and Wood, my cousin got married in Byron Bay, and that's all they had. So every time I drink one, it takes me back to those beautiful beaches. And it's the same with I'll often now think of the Shambles down in Hobart. I went to a really good gig down there, and that's all I was drinking. So you attach these things to moments, and I think that's a fun thing about beer that's probably not always talked about. So.
Yeah, definitely. It's people throw that sort of thing around for food, that it's centered in time and place, but I think beer especially because of its variability and and ease of travelling with, you can tie it to so many different places, and like there's particular beers for particular things that will remind you of certain stuff. And that's, you know, I think that's part of the journey, part of the adventure of beer, is being able to go places and do things and have those memories be tied to a flavour.
Yeah, yeah. I think you are like 100% right there, and that feels like a really beautiful and poignant moment to wrap this up. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. For the people listening at home, where can they find St John's?
So it's in St John Street in Launceston, Tasmania.
That makes sense.
Number 133. And you can find us just by walking up the street and finding.
Yep. And you guys are St John's on all the socials?
Yeah, all our socials are just St John Craft Beer, SAINT. We never abbreviate that.
Yep. Never compromise.
That's it.
Sums you guys up.
We're kind of wishing we had, because now all our email addresses are really long.
Yep. Awesome, man. Thank you so much for doing this interview.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
And I'm sure all the beer babes out there will be heading on down to St John's.
Cool.